For most of human history, the night did not hold one sleep. It held two, split by a waking hour that could run past 90 minutes. Sometimes it stretched close to 2 full hours, spent quietly awake in the dark. Historians call it the first sleep and the second sleep. In between sat something else entirely. People simply called it the watch. Picture it. You lie down not long after dark. You drift off within the hour. Then, sometime past midnight, your eyes open again. Not from a nightmare, not from noise outside, just awake, fully awake, in a house with no lamp worth lighting and nowhere in particular to go. For centuries, this was ordinary. Diaries mention it the way you'd mention washing your face. Then, in the span of about 100 years, it vanished. It vanished so completely that when a historian finally dug up the evidence in 1990, most sleep doctors had never heard of it. 2 sleeps and a watch in between. That was the shape of the night for most of the people who ever lived. Buried inside that forgotten pattern is a real answer to something that quietly worries a lot of us today. Why you sometimes snap awake at 3 a.m., heart a little too alert, certain something is wrong, when your great-great-grandparents would have simply called that hour Tuesday. A historian named Roger Ekirch found the 2 sleeps almost by accident. He was digging through court records for a book on nighttime crime in early modern England. Witnesses kept describing events as happening after first sleep or before their second sleep. They said it casually, as if everyone already knew exactly what it meant. Ekirch pulled the thread. By the time he finished, he had collected more than 500 references to segmented sleep. They spanned over 1,000 years and more than a dozen languages. They turned up everywhere once he knew what to look for. A 16th century French physician wrote medical guidance for patients during the first sleep. An English household manual from the 1500s recommended study in the first sleep before rising for a second one nearer dawn. Chaucer's Canterbury Tales mentions a character waking from his first sleep, tossed off as an ordinary plot detail. Homer's Odyssey, 1,000 years older still, describes a man rising during his first sleep to finish a task in the dark. Older still might be the first printed use in English. A 1535 Bible translation by Miles Coverdale describes a general's soldiers finally settling into their first sleep, using the phrase the way you'd use any ordinary clock reference. A Persian dream manual instructed readers to retire early, wake for quiet prayer, and lie back down for a second sleep before sunrise. Court depositions from provincial France describe neighbors testifying about what they'd seen. In the time between the 2 sleeps, that window was reliable enough to double as a clock. One Italian account uses it to time a household chore, a servant sent to check the bread between sleeps, since the ovens needed tending anyway. None of these sources treat it as strange. That's the detail that convinces you it's real. Nobody stops to explain a thing they assume you already understand. For over 1,000 years, across 4 continents, nobody did. German has its own pair of words for it. Vorschlaf and Nachschlaf, the sleep before and the sleep after. In 1699, a French peasant's journal casually logs a household argument as happening at the hour of first sleep, using it the same way you'd write down a time on a clock face. None of these people were quoting each other. They were describing the same ordinary night, independently, in language after language, for over a millennium. That same pattern shows up in fiction that wasn't trying to record anything at all. A 17th century English play has a character casually arrange a secret meeting twixt sleeps, and the line needs no footnote for its original audience. Almanacs, sermons, and household advice columns kept the phrase circulating well into the 1700s, long after most readers had probably stopped noticing their own two sleeps as anything worth naming out loud. So what did people actually do? Awake in the dark, hours left before dawn, no light worth the cost of lighting. Mostly ordinary things. Some prayed. Religious writers of the period specifically recommended the watch for quiet devotion. A mind freshly risen from sleep, in a silent house, was said to be clearer than one still racing toward the day's chores. Others lay still and turned over the dreams from their first sleep. Dream interpretation was serious work in this period, and a dream recalled fresh from sleep was trusted far more than one remembered hours later. Married couples talked, and did rather more than talk. Physicians specifically recommended the watch as the best time to conceive a child. A couple was more relaxed after a first sleep than at bedtime, the reasoning went, and less exhausted than they'd be by dawn. At least one 16th century medical text says so in plain terms. Some people simply got up. They banked a dying fire. They checked on livestock, smoked a pipe by a window, or walked a few houses down to visit a neighbor. Night visiting was common enough that etiquette survives for how to do it politely. Tap softly, don't wake the rest of a sleeping household. A few just lay there doing nothing at all. More than one account describes this state as calmer than ordinary waking life, closer to a light trance than insomnia. Others used it for the sky. Before street lighting existed anywhere, the watch was prime viewing for naked-eye astronomy, and more than one almanac from the period recommends it specifically for watching the stars, timing planting by them, or simply telling time by which constellation had risen since bedtime. Midwives worked the hour too. Labor has never respected a single sleep cycle, and plenty of surviving birth accounts place the hardest hour of a delivery squarely in the middle of the night, between a mother's two sleeps. There are complaints too. Not everyone loved the watch. Some writers call it tedious, a stretch to be endured before second sleep finally arrived. But tedious or not, nobody treated it as broken. It was simply the shape the night took. Every single night, for as long as anyone could remember. Picture a single ordinary night, put together from the pieces historians actually found. It's an English farmhouse, sometime in the 1650s. You bank the fire around 8, blow out the one tallow candle in the room, and lie down on a straw mattress beside whoever shares your bed. Sleep comes fast. There's nothing else to do once it's dark, and the work starts again at first light. Sometime past midnight, you wake. No reason, no sound. Your eyes are just open, staring at a ceiling you can't see. Beside you, your bedmate stirs too, murmuring something about a dream already fading. You don't reach for anything, because there's nothing to reach for. No candle worth the cost of lighting for an hour you'll spend lying still anyway. Instead, you talk, quietly, about the dream, about tomorrow's chores, about a neighbor's new debt. Maybe you get up to check the fire, or to listen for the cow through the wall.
We should add more.
An hour passes this way.
Soon.
Maybe 2.
Let us wait a little longer.
At some
in the
point,
quiet.
without deciding to, you notice you're tired again. You settle back down, and second sleep takes you almost as fast as the first one did. You don't wake again until the sky outside turns grey. Nothing about it felt strange, because it never felt like anything at all. It was just Tuesday night, same as last Tuesday, same as the one before that. Households didn't all share the same watch, though. In a wealthier house nearby, a manservant is rousted from his own first sleep at the same hour, not by his body, but by a bell. He pads down cold stairs to bank the hall fire and check the shutters, his master's peaceful watch depending entirely on someone else losing part of theirs. By the time he gets back to his own straw pallet, his hour of quiet wakefulness is already half spent, eaten by somebody else's night. Here is the strange part. This might not be a habit passed down at all. It might be plain biology, uncovered 3 centuries later by an accident of experiment. In 1992, a psychiatrist named Thomas Wehr ran a study that, without meaning to, recreated a pre-industrial night. He kept 14 volunteers in near total darkness for 14 hours a day. Every day, for a full month. No artificial light allowed. None of the evening glow that fills a modern house long after sunset. By the second week, without anyone instructing them to, the volunteers' sleep split in 2. They fell asleep, woke after roughly 4 hours, and stayed calmly awake for 1 to 3 hours. Then they drifted back to sleep until morning. Blood drawn during that awake stretch showed elevated prolactin, the same hormone linked to the calm, almost meditative state some animals show right after giving birth. Wehr hadn't set out to prove any historical theory. He was studying how light affects mood and sleep, full stop. But what his subjects produced on their own matched what Ekirch had been finding in 400-year-old court depositions, almost line for line, down to the length of the gap. Take 14 hours of real darkness. Hand it to a modern person with no phone, no lamp, no glowing screen. Something old reasserts itself, unasked. It doesn't need to be taught. It only needs the dark to be dark enough, and long enough to let it happen. Later researchers repeated versions of Wehr's experiment with similar results, and the pattern held up each time. Give a body enough uninterrupted darkness, with nothing artificial competing against it, and the single 8-hour block most of us call normal sleep quietly splits back into 2, right on schedule, as if it had simply been waiting for the chance. This wasn't only a European habit, and it wasn't only historical either. Researchers studying groups living without electricity today found nights that look nothing like the tidy 8-hour block modern sleep advice treats as universal. A 2015 study tracked sleep across 3 hunter-gatherer and forager-farmer societies, the Hadza in Tanzania, the San in Namibia, and the Tsimane in Bolivia, through more than 1,000 recorded nights combined. Sleep in all 3 groups came broken and multi-part far more often than it came as one clean stretch. Waking in the small hours, a routine feature of the night rather than a disorder to treat. Ethnographers working in communities across Africa and South America have recorded the same 2-part vocabulary European court records used centuries earlier. A first rest, a waking period, a second rest, described as plainly as naming morning and afternoon. Nobody had told these communities about Ekirch's archives. They'd simply kept living the pattern their ancestors always had, because nothing about their nights had changed enough to break it. Researchers studying the Hadza also noticed the segmenting tracked the season. Nights split more clearly, and for longer, during colder months, when there was simply more darkness to fill. Mirroring almost exactly what European court records show for winter watches versus summer ones 500 years earlier. Different continents, different centuries, the same practical math. Even now, in places with unreliable electricity, or none at all, segmented sleep quietly persists. It isn't a medieval quirk, and it isn't uniquely Western. It looks a lot more like the human default, one that only vanished where cheap, reliable light arrived early enough to erase it. Not every waking hour in the dark was quiet devotion. The watch had a rougher side too. Most of what survives of it comes from crime records, not diaries. Segmented sleep gave the night a very specific shape. A household soundly under during first sleep, then a long window when at least somebody nearby was reliably awake and moving. Early modern English court depositions are full of it. A thief testifies he chose that hour specifically because he knew the house would be between sleeps and the street would be empty. A wife notices her husband missing from bed during the watch and raises the household. A servant is caught slipping out during the gap and can't explain where he was going. Fires started in the watch, and were sometimes caught in it too. A candle left burning while its owner drifted between the two sleeps. Affairs were arranged around it, timed to a partner's known sleep pattern, the way people today might time a text for after someone's asleep. Ghost stories cluster in that hour as well. Accounts of visitations and night terrors disproportionately describe the stretch just after first sleep, when a house sat dark and silent, and exactly one person lay awake, staring at shapes, questioning what they were seeing. None of this required superstition to explain. It only required reliability. An hour that repeated every single night, one in which the rest of a household could be counted on to be unconscious, was the only door available if you wanted privacy the daylight world wouldn't allow. Sit with that for a second. An entire culture organized its secrecy, its stolen errands, its quiet affairs, around a sleep pattern. Not so different from how we organize secrecy around a locked phone screen at 2 a.m. One surviving case lays it out almost too neatly. A servant accused of driving off 2 stolen sheep told the court he'd chosen the lane between the first sleep and the second, certain no one would be awake to see it. He was wrong. A neighbor's own watch happened to fall at the same hour, standing at a window, unable to sleep, and the servant was caught because of it. Parishes eventually formalized that danger into a job. A paid bellman or constable patrolled specifically through the watch, calling the hour, checking locks, because everyone already knew that was when trouble happened. That job outlived the 2 sleeps by centuries. Long after people stopped literally waking between 2 named sleeps, towns kept paying someone to patrol the exact hours the watch used to occupy. Not everyone experienced the watch the same way. The differences tell you almost as much as the pattern itself. The poor lived it hardest and cheapest. A single tallow candle cost real money to a laboring family. Their watch mostly happened in total darkness. Talk, prayer, or small chores that didn't need eyes. Mending by feel, turning over coals, listening for animals through a shared barn wall. The wealthy could afford a different watch entirely, lit by beeswax candles that didn't smoke or stink. Some spent it reading, writing letters, or receiving a servant summoned specifically for the hour. Servants themselves rarely got a peaceful watch at all. Household manuals instruct them to rise during it, check the house, tend fires that had to survive till morning, or answer a master's bell. For them, the gap between sleeps wasn't quiet reflection. It was an unpaid second shift, built directly into the household schedule and simply expected. Night watchmen made a profession out of everyone else's first sleep. Town criers called the hours through the watch specifically, because that's when their voice carried furthest through streets otherwise empty of everyone but them. A few thieves, and the occasional insomniac lying by a window, listening. Gender shaped it too. Women's accounts of the watch leaned toward household tasks and children. Feeding an infant, resettling a coughing toddler, one of the most commonly documented uses of the gap. Men's accounts lean toward outdoor errands, neighbor visits, the occasional theft. Same hour, same darkness, almost entirely different night, depending on who you were inside it. Monasteries built an entire institution around that same hour. The night office of matins, sometimes called vigils, was chanted in the deep dark, roughly midway through the night. Precisely the slot most laypeople spent lying awake between their own 2 sleeps. Monks didn't invent the watch. They turned it into liturgy, structuring formal prayer around an hour the whole surrounding countryside was already living through, awake, right alongside them. The 2 sleeps didn't disappear because anyone decided they should. They disappeared because the night itself got cheaper to light. Candles and oil lamps were expensive and mildly dangerous for most of history, an extravagance for evenings, not a given. Public street lighting changed that first. Paris installed a coordinated citywide lighting system in the 1660s. London followed not long after. Suddenly, the hours after dark weren't dead time to sleep through in 2 shifts. They were hours you could work in, socialize in, read in, hours worth staying up for. Gaslighting, spreading through the 1800s, pushed the change into private homes. Bedtimes crept later, house by house. Stay up past midnight under a gas lamp instead of turning in by 9, and there's no longer enough darkness left in the night to fit 2 full sleeps and a watch between them. The whole cycle compresses into 1 block. Not by preference, by simple necessity. Industrial time discipline finished the job. Factories ran on a single shift bell, not a body's own rhythm. A workforce that had to be alert at a fixed hour every morning, had no room in its schedule for an hour of prayer or dream reflection at 2 a.m. sleep, stopped being something the night shaped around a person. It became something a person was expected to complete efficiently, in 1 block, so they'd be useful the next day. Coffee houses helped too, springing up by the hundreds across 18th century London and Paris, giving people somewhere warm, lit, and social to spend the evening instead of a dark bedroom. Nobody wrote an essay announcing the 2 sleeps were over. There wasn't a debate to lose or a decision to reverse. Thomas Edison's incandescent bulb, patented in 1879, only accelerated a shift already decades underway. By the 1920s, electric light was reaching a majority of urban homes across Britain and the United States, finishing what gas lamps and street lighting had started a century before. By 1920, references to a first sleep had all but vanished from print in industrialized countries. Within a single generation, doctors and diarists alike stopped mentioning something everyone's grandparents had taken for granted. Ekirch found a handful of last holdouts, remote communities in Central Africa and rural Brazil, still living without electric light, still sleeping in 2 shifts well into the 20th century. Proof the pattern hadn't gone anywhere. The dark had just gone somewhere else. Look at what's left of it now. Millions of people wake somewhere around 3 a.m., stare at the ceiling, and quietly diagnose themselves with insomnia. They reach for a phone, or a sleeping pill, or start rehearsing tomorrow's meeting, certain their body is malfunctioning. Maybe it isn't. Maybe it's just old. Sleep researchers who've studied Ekirch's archive alongside Wehr's darkness experiment now suspect a real share of what gets treated as a modern sleep disorder is this exact pattern: segmented sleep, trying to reassert itself in a body that no longer expects it, and a culture with no name left for it. Your great-great-grandparents would have recognized that 3 a.m. waking instantly. They'd have called it the watch, said a quiet prayer, turned over a dream, maybe murmured with whoever was lying next to them, and drifted back to sleep without a second thought. We kept the electric light. We kept the packed schedule and the single unbroken block we now treat as the only normal way to rest. We lost the vocabulary for the part in between. We just labeled the leftover piece, waking up at the wrong time, and started treating it like a malfunction instead of a memory. An entire industry now exists to sell that malfunction back to you. Sleep aids, apps, weighted blankets, supplements promising one perfect, uninterrupted night. Billions of dollars a year, built almost entirely on the assumption that any waking in the middle of the night is a problem with a product-shaped solution. Some sleep clinicians now tell anxious patients something much older instead. Stop fighting the wakefulness. Get up if you need to. Do something quiet. And trust that a second sleep is coming. It's advice modern medicine arrived at independently. A Tudor farmhand could have given the same advice for free. 2 sleeps and a watch in between. That was the actual shape of the night for most of the people who have ever lived. Longer, in total hours of quiet wakefulness than the single, unbroken block we now insist is the only correct way to rest. So the next time you open your eyes at 3 a.m. for no reason you can name, you're probably not broken. You might just be keeping a much older appointment than you think. One your body still remembers, even though the rest of the world quietly forgot to tell you it ever existed.